talking to you guys like you make big decisions in the legislature, because you do, and a lot of you sitting up there are key votes between deciding on pretty big policies. So while you don't represent the entire legislature, you are our access to that. So that's why we're holding you to these questions like you represent the entire legislature, because you are that for us.
Hello,
Hello, everybody.
What's going on, guys?
Recording live from KCDI Studios. This is Sunflower State of Mind. If you've joined us before, thank you for your time and feedback, and welcome. If you are new here, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, share, and let us know your thoughts by participating in the comments. I'm Kent Williams. With me tonight, as always, Zach Worf and Whitney Buckman.
Hey guys, how's it going? Another show tonight. Yep, like Kent said, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, pray to the old gods, pray to the new, whatever it may be. Get those ratings up there. Bum, bum, bum. We got a great show tonight, guys. It is the season finale, our 32nd episode. It has been a season. We've interviewed almost all of our local representatives, I think, outside of tonight. We will be concluding that tour.
We've missed quite a few.
Well, I mean, our main ones that go to our legislative coffees.
Yeah,
we still got one more.
And we now have Dr. Clifford tonight, which
Yep.
is awesome.
So
Super
yeah,
excited.
yeah,
Yeah.
we got
And
the
if you did-
Dr. Clifford going on, and so which means we're doing a political thing, and if that means Facebook's going to do crackdowns on the visibility of all types of things on this show. So especially if you're inclined, smash the like button, and now if you're also disinclined, put the angry button. Whatever interactions
Right.
help. They don't have the middle finger button quite up just yet, so eventually. But any interactions will help spread the show if you want to keep watching us in the future. So make sure you're interacting and saying hello.
Yeah, absolutely. This week's episode is brought to you by Dude Smell This LLC. At Dude Smell This LLC, we are passionate about good products, exceptional service, and a positive team spirit. Dude Smell This LLC offers the highest quality CBD products at the most competitive prices. Dude Smell This LLC can tailor your CBD to fit your dietary needs, from sports, rebound, anti-aging skin treatment, eye treatment, sleep, syrup, easy queasy elixirs, respiratory support, immune boost, and a full spectrum of needs. Visit dudesmellthisllc.com and get started on your journey for a better, beautiful way of life. Dude Smell This LLC, located at 920 East Grand in Hayesville, Kansas. Call them now at 316-351-4620. So again, guys, we have a great show lined up for you tonight. We're so excited about Dr. Bill Clifford. If you don't know who he is, Dr. Clifford is a Republican member of the House of Representatives representing District 122. According to Ballotpedia, he assumed office on November 22nd, 2001, after being appointed to fill the vacancy left by the passing of former Representative Russ Jennings. He won re-election in the Journal on November 8th of 2022. He lives here in Garden City, Kansas. He's an I'm gonna screw it up. Ophthalmologist. I've been saying it for like 3 days. Ophthalmologist and president of Fry Eye Surgery Center.
He's a bad guy.
Dr. Clifford has served on the GCC Board of Trustees and County Commission. So we're excited to have him here. We've also got USD 457 in our purview right now. The contract negotiations for teachers are going on as we speak.
Yep.
They've been pretty interesting. If you've tuned in and watched, I'm sure we're gonna have some clips and some reacts come out. Even though this is our season finale, we plan to stay active on our Facebook page. So again, like, share, subscribe. You got to interact so you can see us on your timelines there. So what's going on May 19th, Whitney?
May 19th. Oh, sorry. May 19th is actually going to be a pretty big day. This is going to be the LGBTQ Kansas. They are doing at the Great Plains Makerspace, they are doing a gender marker workshop. So if somebody is trans and looking to do their changes, they are now on a time clock to legally get that done. And on May 19th, the LGBTQ Foundation of Kansas is hosting with a lawyer to help people figure out the bureaucracy of getting those markers changed. That would be like your birth certificate, various documents, things of that nature. So Laura Crow will be the attorney there. And if you're looking to change, while normally we would say, hey, take your time, you can get it done, you can now. I think June 1st, maybe July 1st. I think it's June 1st.
June 1st
is the deadline to get that done. So May 19th is when you can get some legal assistance to figure out what you have to do, because it is a lot of bureaucracy and red tape. So.
And we will be right back with Kansas House Representative Dr. Bill Clifford after a message from Trevino's Barbershop.
So at this time, we'd like to welcome from District 122, Kansas House of Representatives, Dr. Bill Clifford to the show. Dr. Clifford, thank you so much for being here tonight. You're a busy man, busy schedule. So thanks again for being here to talk with us. How are you?
And full disclosure tonight, I just want to let everybody know I've known Dr. Clifford for most of my adult life. So conflict of interest is exposed now.
We still have a vehicle right outside the window that you sold to us from the Honda dealer, Zach.
You know, suckers are born every day. I don't know what to tell you.
Hey, it's still running after 225,000 miles. So thank you very much.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's impressive.
Thanks for the time in the green room. I appreciate it. Very comfortable here.
Yeah, great.
Looks great. So for those of us that aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself, Doc.
Well, you might find it very odd or interesting. I was born in the same hospital as President Trump. We weren't switched at birth, but my parents were native New Yorkers. Their parents, at least on my mom's side, were immigrants from Ireland. As you all are very well aware, we're except for Native Americans, we're all from somewhere else. My grandfather actually kind of snuck his way in, but received citizenship under President Reagan, of all things. They raised big families back east. At 17, I raised my right hand to enter the military and matriculate at the Air Force Academy here out west. Spent a total of 10 years in the service, met my wife, Jean, in the service. She proudly served 30 years, 10 active as I did, and then 20 reserve. So I have to salute her smartly every morning. She outranks me. I flew airplanes in the Air Force. This room has a number of my pieces of memorabilia. You can see an airplane behind me. But I figured he needed to grow up sometime. I kept the piece in Europe for 6 years and was ready to make a transition to medical school, which, of course, took about 10 more years. While I was making that transition, I was at the University of Oklahoma. Came up here to Garden City for 10 days to fill in as a locum physician while Dr. Fry got away on his first vacation about 20 years. Thought, great place, golf, I could fly airplanes close to my alma mater, and he needed somebody desperately. Gene and I were committed to a contract in Saudi Arabia. I was to do eye surgery for a year. She was to serve in the military. And we took our 3 young daughters to Saudi for a year, but I promised Dr. Fry would come back, and indeed I did in 1995, and been here ever since.
Interesting. Do you still fly?
I just fly in the back.
Fly in the back. Okay.
I flew for about 15 years. I helped out the University of Oklahoma, and I would fly there once a quarter to help take care of my fellow veterans at the Oklahoma City VA. Had a lot of kids, a couple hard landings, and a busy practice, and thought not a good mix. So about a dozen years ago, I gave up flying privately. I miss it every day.
You do travel quite a bit, don't you, in Southwest Kansas as part of the practice?
Well, I satellite to Colby. Actually, Friday I will be in clinic in Colby. Thanks to the late Representative Jim Morrison, who was an optometrist in Colby. I started there in 1995, and I've maintained continuous practice, just 2 days per month. In fact, while I'm in the legislature, it's an easier trip down I-70 to get to Colby rather than make the jaunt here and dodge the deer. So I'll often satellite or operate in Colby rather than come back directly to Garden City. So a partner of mine, Travis Kimple, who's quite new, you might know, An Tron, who grew up here. I don't know what class she graduated. She's a nurse. They're married. And quite fortunately, she brought him back to Garden City for us. So he's now 2 years with us and doing a great job. But he goes to Lamar, Colorado. So that's our outreach now. You can only do so much, and we're very busy at home. And I came here to be busy, and we still are.
How much apart? Dr. Fry brought LASIK eye surgery. He was a pretty big part of LASIK eye surgery for the nation and the world, correct?
No, his thing was cataract surgery.
Cataracts. I'm sorry.
And
Cataract surgery.
he retired with 42,000 cataracts. Coming here with three young children, I met him and said, "I'll never do what you do," and I'm about halfway there now. So with my legislative detour, I won't ever catch up. But he set a high bar. I brought LASIK to the practice. We did LASIK here right up to the pandemic, but was hoping our new associate or a future new associate would pick that up because it's a fun thing to do. We have great technology, but I'm busy. I practice 1 day a week, January through April while I'm in session. Now I'm considered full-time at 3 days a week with the alternate Colby Friday. So about 3.5 days a week in practice, but it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, on to the tough stuff.
Let me have it.
So we want to talk a little bit tonight about some of the bills that you've sponsored or have voted for in this last legislative session and the one before. One of them was HB 2036, which would exempt from property taxation any residential property owned and occupied by a veteran who is retired from the armed services of the United States and who has a disability rating of at least 50% as a result of service-connected injuries or diseases. The exemption would apply to the first $200,000 of appraised property value. The bill would also allow surviving spouses of eligible veterans to continue to claim it as long as they weren't remarried. What motivated you to support this bill, and how do you think it will benefit the veterans in your district and in Kansas? And also, how do you plan to address the potential fiscal impact of this bill on state and local governments?
Well, you're right. It had a $9 million, 10.9, I wrote it down wrong, $1 million fiscal note. We have about a dozen and a half veterans in the House. They're far less on the Senate side. We have a very active Veterans Caucus. Representative Pat Proctor, who's from Leavenworth and represents, of course, the Army base there, is very motivated to keep veterans in Kansas. You probably don't know, disabled veterans bring about $800 million into the state in federal disability payments. It's a huge number. And we felt like these folks, it was attractive from the standpoint of state residency, and I could give reasons for that, but they've served their time. Being a military veteran, I always say to people when they say, "Thanks for your service," I say, we all gave some, but some gave all. And others gave parts of their bodies and really deserve that tax break. It was nice that we tried to preserve the surviving spouses' entitlement to that. And I felt like it was going to be an $11 million well spent. We did pass
the
it
bill.
out.
It did. It passed 123 to 1, and the Senate referred the bill to a committee and taxation. What are some of the challenges and obstacles that you anticipate in getting this bill passed and signed by the governor?
Well, it ended up, as you say, in Senator Tyson's committee in the Senate. She was quite busy with other bills. We can talk about the tax bill later, and never scheduled it for hearing in the Senate. Again, we lobby within the House, under the dome, and this is a biennium. We're elected for 2 years, so nothing really has gone away. This bill is still in play. We in the Rural Caucus in the House will lobby Senator Tyson and get that bill a hearing, and I'm sure it will.
Yeah, good. Moving on to HR 6023. It was a resolution from last year that condemned Russia on the invasion of Ukraine and urges the United States federal government to provide aid and support to the Ukrainian people. Why did you sponsor this resolution? And what kind of aid and support do you think the U.S. should be providing to Ukraine now?
Well, I didn't elaborate on my military career, but I actually served in Europe during the Cold War. And I'm very aware of the interaction of the Soviet Union and its republics. I was not in Europe for the breakup of the Soviet Union, but have great sympathy for countries like Ukraine that border the Soviet Union. Uh, Attack on peaceful countries is attack on us all. It's become rather expensive, I realize, but I've been fully supportive of supporting Ukraine. We have relatives in Florida who are married to Ukrainian women, so we've been exposed to the hardship rather directly that their families have suffered in Ukraine. Last year, and that you're right, that was from the 2021 session. This was front and center. Kansas and Ukraine share a lot. I mean, it's the wheat belt, just like we are. It's had an impact on starvation and hunger in the world, and I feel that that's very important, particularly for sub-Saharan Africa, where they source most of their wheat from Ukraine, or they did. Their colors, blue and yellow, those are our Kansas colors.
Yes.
We identify with Ukraine. My wife actually made beautiful ribbons that most House members wore last session that commemorated or was a reminder of what was going on. We enjoy such peace in this country. I mean, we just take it for granted.
Some of us.
Some of us, Zach, not all of us, but there's a price for this freedom. And, God bless the Ukrainians. They are fighting for their survival every day.
I definitely agree with Ukraine being a peaceful, innocent nation in all of this. The unfettered blank check for all of it is gotten out of control, in my opinion. We got out of a war and went right back into a war. I would like to see the surrounding countries participate a little bit more financially. And
I agree.
They actually share a border with this country and are actually at threat here. And so I wish they would express the same amount of concern that we have. I think we've written a blank check and we don't have any intention of getting out of it. And it seems to me to be making very rich people much richer.
No, I couldn't agree more with you. We're wrangling with that. The Biden administration has got to come to terms with it. Poland certainly has anteed up. They're an adjacent country, but I think Germany, France, all of Europe could do a whole lot more. This is a European war.
I think the United States would do itself a favor by saying we will match what a combination of what all other countries put combined. We will match it, but not a penny more.
Yeah,
that would be if I was king of the country or whatever. That's what I would do.
Great suggestion.
So on House Sub for SB 169, which is the tax bill, it provides an income tax rate of 5.25% for individuals and decreases the normal tax for corporations, increases the standard deduction, provides for itemized deductions, provides for a food sales tax refund, provides for a child and dependent care credit, provides for a Social Security benefit subduction modification, provides for a property tax lid exemption, and makes other changes to the Kansas income tax laws. How will H sub for Senate Bill 169 affect the state's ability to fund essential services such as education, healthcare, and transportation?
Well, it's a great topic to talk about, and frankly, for me, it's the biggest disappointment of the session. We didn't get the tax cut done. Right now, we have a rainy day fund of $1.5 billion. I'm proud of that. Don't get me wrong. We've never put that kind of money away for a rainy day, and it's not locked away totally, but it takes certain legislative action agreement by the governor to use those resources. But if we run into a recession, we'll need them. But on top of that, we have probably 1.7 billion between the mandatory constitutional 7.5% ending balance and the surplus, which is one-time federal money, as you know. That's laying in Topeka. What the tax cut anticipated was about a $500 million, maybe $450 million initial cut out of that 1.7. We leave way more than $1 billion still on the table to fund essential services. Out years, a little bit higher. The total in 3 years, about 1.3 billion. But what I was seeking, what I am seeking, and again, we're in a biennium, so it's not going away, is structural tax relief. I know the governor proposed one-time checks to individuals, but I think structural relief should be on the table. The Social Security cliff, for instance, that you referred to, if you make $75,000 in retirement, no tax on Social Security. If you make $75,001, it's all taxable. That's called a cliff, and you can fall over it. We were going to graduate that to 100,000, that people 100 and above would pay on Social Security, but before that, up to that level, it wouldn't hit you. We gave the governor the march to zero on the state portion of the food tax. The House wanted that this July. I mean, 6 weeks from now, we would have gone to zero. The Senate in negotiation pushed that to January 1st. But again, it was accelerating what the governor wanted in cutting the statewide sales tax on food. The homestead exemption, there's politics and everything. You all are very aware of that. In the House, we accepted the minority leader, Vic Miller, the Democrat leader. He motioned or amended to an $80,000 homestead exemption. It's $40,000 right now. We had 60 in our bill. Vic wanted 80. We voted for that in the House overwhelmingly. And we had 95 votes approving that tax cut bill with all the things in it. The level tax, Social Security cliff exemption, food sales tax acceleration. Unfortunately, in Senate negotiations, that 80 got cut back to 60, and we lost some Democratic votes. We still would have had 85 in the House on the Republican side, but we never got it back because, as you're probably aware, in the Senate, there were a couple of paybacks politically between a few senators, names I probably won't mention, that basically cut the feet out from under the Senate president, and they did not override on that tax cut. So again, I'm aware we may be headed to a recession, and Adam Smith, the House tax chair from Westgate, would be a great guy to have on next year. He was very thoughtful about this package, and he was there when they had to vote for a tax increase after the Brownback problems. He doesn't want to vote for a tax increase, nor do I. This was a very thoughtful package, and I really thought we'd get it across the line.
According to the Kansas Center for Economic Growth, a nonpartisan tank, it'll raise taxes on 60% of Kansans, most earning less than $50,000 a year.
So the tax rate now, and you all are victims or beneficiaries of this, depending on how you look at it, 3.7 at the lowest end, 5.25 in the middle, higher end 5.7. Everybody was going to go to, and actually the number, Kent, is 5.15. You were right. The House had 5.25. We were going to accept the middle rate. So the middle taxpayers were not going to change at all. For the lower end, below 30,000 folks, we were increasing the exemptions. And you did talk about that, the standard deductions, so that the low end would not be impacted with a rise. Yes, there would be tax cuts above 50,000. But I looked at this, and I'm in a two-doctor. Go ahead, Zach.
So the estimate though is for those earning between 23,000 and 39,000 would be 67 a year, while those earning more. 39 to 62,000 would be paying 52 more a year.
Yeah, I didn't see those numbers come out of Adam's tax committee. I subbed on tax several times, and we were very careful to not impact the lower earners or even the up to 50,000 earners. Now, yes, the tax cut would impact positively the higher earners, but I mean, my practice, two-doctor business, 40 employees, all in taxes, property, income, disability, you name it, $1 million of tax. And our employees, admittedly, are paying most of that from their salaries. businesses generate the tax revenue, and that's why that tax decrease would impact them positively. What would I do with the extra money? What I did last week, we gave out a bonus. We'd do it again because I think our employees deserve it. So we'll go back to the drawing boards. Your input is welcome. I like the 525 number that Kent mentioned before. The Senate wanted 4.75. That would have bankrupted the state. But the House prevailed, I would say, in negotiation to get the flat tax or the level tax to 515. Again, I think 525 would be better. But it's a great package. We'll be back. I don't think we're going back. You might want to get to that, depending on what we do, what the governor does with the education budget. We could get back to that if we're called back to Topeka. I don't think we will be. But again, in the biennium, we'll talk about it in January.
And what about the claim that the bill would eliminate the food sales tax credit that benefits low-income households and reduce state revenues by $1.4 billion over 3 years?
That's correct, and we've got the surplus to back that up. The lower end, again.
The point of a surplus is to save it for a rainy day, though, not to find a reason to spend it.
No, you're right. We have the 1.5. That's locked away. I'm talking about the other.
You're like a teenager with a $5 bill in their pocket burning a hole.
Well, as you know, the governor was here. Senator Dahl and Representative Lewis and I were on a panel to discuss teacher promotion, teacher development, teacher recruitment. And the governor said that the tax cut would impact education. Representative Lewis and I, and he's probably said this on the air with you, talked about, hey, this is people's money. We're being careful. She caught me after that discussion and said, Bill, I need that money for economic development. We've been very successful with economic development projects back in eastern Kansas, if you ask me. I need that money to promote economic development. So that's what our governor thinks of doing with that money. I'd rather it was back to the taxpayer.
I just wish instead of asking where can we cut spending, the question would be where can we increase revenues from this state? Like, I don't know, marijuana expansion, Medicaid expansion. These things are just money that leaves our state and creates cartels and black markets in the cannabis industry, which also brings in human trafficking, which is a big problem in our area. And if we were proposing ways to increase money coming into the state instead of finding ways to cut the money we already have and spend the money we already have, we would benefit everybody, in my opinion. That just doesn't seem to be the discussion here, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll cite something I voted for last session, which is the online sports betting. I got a lot of criticism from the right on that. I felt like the money was going to the Cayman Islands, and I'm libertarian enough to say people want to gamble, let them gamble. It holds no interest for me, but we wanted that revenue to stay in Kansas, and that's exactly why that bill was supported. For better, for worse, people are on their phones, and their money was going out of state with online gambling.
Yeah. So, moving on, HB 2313 is a bill that would create the Born Alive Infants Protection Act to provide legal protections for infants who are born alive regardless of intent of the delivery. Require physicians to provide medical care to infants born alive as the result of a botched abortion procedure appropriate to their gestational age, and to report data to the state about any such incident. Provide criminal penalties and civil liberty for violations of the act. Amend KSA 65-445 and repeal the existing section. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on the subject, as I feel many aspects of this bill are going to be challenged as unconstitutional in the Kansas Supreme Court, and it's going to be between you and them there. But how would you respond to the criticism that this bill was completely unnecessary, unconstitutional, and infringes on women's reproductive rights?
Well, if you want to see dramatic
It's a woman
testimony,
opinion.
get on YouTube and listen to Representative Ron Bryce, who testified for this bill twice, carried on the House floor. Ron's from Coffeyville, Kansas. He's an emergency physician, worked in Dallas for several decades. When he was in training, he looked at the statistics for this. In a large metropolitan hospital where there are thousands of deliveries, there were 28 born alive babies during abortions. As you know, I'm a physician. I would never want to be in the position of having to decide.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
You said 28 born alive. Was that here in the state of Kansas?
No, that was his experience in Dallas.
Thank you. Okay.
But it certainly does happen. And for me as a physician, I'm trying to make it easy on the abortionist, okay? If they get a baby crying outside of mom, that's a child born alive. Once you hear a cry, they don't have to decide, I'm going to put that baby over here on the table till it dies. They now have guidance on what they need to do. As you read, appropriate for gestational age treatment, that may be just the mom holds it till it stops dying, but it isn't smother the baby. It isn't put the baby on a cold metal table until it dies. So for me, from a physician standpoint, it was easing things for the doctor performing the abortion.
So something that did actually happen in Kansas is a child who rang a wrong doorbell was shot by the owner of the home. And that's a problem that's happened up and down the country. Is there any plan to address actual children deaths that is actually a problem? I don't have the exact number of children deaths in Kansas in front of me, but I promise you it's more than 28.
Yeah, I don't know where that has gone in the courts. I presume that the gentleman...
Well, after public outcry, they finally charged the guy, and he was allowed to turn himself in. But there hasn't been an update on that case since then.
Okay. Tragic, Zach, admittedly, totally tragic. I haven't seen any legislation from either side of the aisle to address that. We'll see what we get in the next session.
I would just love to see them spend some time on something that is actually a problem in Kansas.
Yeah.
How will HB 2313 affect your medical practice and your relationship with your parents? Your patients. Not your parents.
Let's face it, okay? Abortion doctors are treat and street docs. The woman comes in 24 hours ahead, gets counseled, told her alternatives, back the next day for abortion, treated and streeted. There's no real relationship between that physician and that patient. I think it will have no impact whatsoever. I follow patients for their lifetime.
One of the issues I had with this bill is a woman goes in and finds out her baby's going to be born without kidneys. She decides to abort the child. From there, this bill allows the father and the mother's parents to sue the patient.
Not the
for
patient,
the abortion.
The doctor who doesn't act appropriately if that child is born alive. Now that child is not going to survive it. No.
What I understand from the bill was that doctor or the hospital would be fined $500, and this would be a level 10 felony for the mother, the whom had the woman who had the abortion.
There's no censure of the mother in that bill. It's all about the actions of the physician.
No censures of the mother, but there is legislation. It's in the bill that we won't argue. I'll provide it to you later. Yep, I'll provide that to you later. My next thought, though, I We like I said, we don't want to spend too much time on it. It's a high tension. We think it's a bill that was designed to create division and separation. We don't believe a baby has been born alive in Kansas.
I think it was a bill made it to look like you guys did something. Hey, look what we did.
Yeah.
We made sure that we can't kill kids that are already alive because we haven't defined murder yet. It was a waste of time.
We voted no on August 2nd with value them both, and that's how we feel about it. So we're moving on to Senate Bill 113. It's a bill that makes appropriations for the Department of Education for the fiscal year 2023, 24, and 25, establishes the Mental Health Intervention Team program, authorizes certain students to participate in activities regulated by the Kansas State High School Activities Association, requires school districts to post certain enrollment and academic information on school district websites, revises school district open enrollment procedures, authorizes local school boards to receive compensation, which is new, authorizes current year student enrollment for determinations of state foundation aid, continues the 20 mil statewide tax levy for schools, amends the school districts that qualify for and the amount that school districts are able to levy pursuant to the cost of waiting. How exactly do you feel SB 113 affects the funding and quality of public education in Kansas?
Well, we've met the Gannon standard, which you are very familiar with. I was hoping, and I held out on the voucher bill, which is a totally separate issue, because we weren't going to get the special ed money, the $72.4 million. It was put in as a sweetener on the voucher bill and then pulled. 7.5 million additional for special aid this year. We have to continue that next year, and there'll be another 7.5, so it'll be 15 million next year for special ed. I would prefer the higher amount that the governor put in her original budget. It's the nature of compromise that we didn't get it. I liked that we could bring the homeschoolers in for activities. I have 7 rural school districts. People view me as representing Garden City 457. That's not a big part of my district, frankly. That's Bob Lewis's baby. I've got 7 rural school districts, 500 kids down to 220. To even have a cheerleading squad, they need to bring in homeschool kids or kids that are in alternative school situations. So I was glad that we kind of overruled the CASHA procedures and said those kids don't have to show up for any classes in the school building, and they can be in activities, whether it's drama, music, anything. So I thought that was very positive. The mental health money, I appreciate you mentioning that. I also served 7 years on the Compass Mental Health Board here in Garden City, so it is an issue near and dear to my heart. I've dealt with mental illness in family. I've dealt with it with patients. I'm glad that we're going to pilot that intervention in schools. We've had some of it. As you might know, Genesis has a grant, and they're at the college, the community college, to help kids. Coming out of COVID, it's been a tough time. You all know probably better than I do in my generation the impact of social media. No offense, but I call it unsocial media because it can ruin people's lives with a few words, sadly. So I was thrilled.
Gambling.
Amen.
But we voted for it. We wanted them to have that freedom.
Amen. And again, I'm not going to suppress free speech, but I can turn it off, but some kids can. But we had a lot of good things in that bill, things I supported, things I wanted. We did meet the Gannon requirements. Early on, that state budget had no high density weighting. I mean, think about that for our kids out here. $2.5 million to Dodge City, 2.7 to Garden City. The rest of my 7 rural school districts, about another $1 million spread over 7 small school districts. So if we didn't get that high density weighting back in the budget, we'd been cooked out here. I will tell you, the rural legislators, and I am among that group, held out against what people in the east part of this state wanted to do to the schools. I would claim it as a victory that we got what we got. And it's the nature of compromise and for me, the noise of democracy. But the rural legislators held tight against our leadership to get this to where it is now.
And a lot of their considerations completely neglect Western Kansas in those considerations. For example, SB 113, it expands the tax credit scholarship program and it benefits private schools at the expense of public schools. Well, guess what? We don't have private schools. We don't have options like that out here. And I know there are people that claim to intend to build them, but we don't have the employment numbers out here. We can't staff the schools that we have, let alone add to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring up a good point, Zach, and I want your listeners to understand there was the voucher bill that would have really opened up the trough, right, for money to go to private schools. And there's the pre-existing scholarship support, which is tax credit based, $10 million in the educational budget. That started in 2015. We really just renewed that. Now, as you point out, it got sweetened, 75% tax credits and a few other sweeteners. I looked at the KDHE report. It came out in January. You might look for that on these scholarship program, tax credit program. Garden City Schools, 33 students between St. Dominic and St. Mary's. Dodge City Schools, 49 students are accessing those scholarships. And I challenge my colleagues who want to use tax money in the voucher program and said, well, have you donated to the scholarship program and gotten a tax credit? Because it already exists. All we did was renew it. So students in our area, I agree, we have limited private school options, and that's why I was against the voucher bill. That's something for the big urban areas, not for us. But yes, you're correct. The scholarship program already exists. It's been in existence for 10 years within the education budget.
So, how will SB 113 ensure accountability and transparency for mental health intervention team program and the private schools that receive that credit scholarship?
Well, it's not going to happen. You make a good point. We have, I think, handicapped the school somewhat by not being able to survey social emotional learning. I mean, how do we know who's having problems or how many kids are dealing with challenges unless we can survey students? Now, parents have always had to opt in, and the legislature's made that a little tighter. But I think, unfortunately, it has discouraged or put a damper on that kind of effort to support our kids, even in the public school system. But you're right, the ones accessing the scholarships, we don't know. But my kids went to St. Dominic K through 6, and I assure you they are emphasizing their social emotional learning, or I wouldn't put them there.
As a politician who has had multiple terms and family members serve multiple terms on school boards of various sorts, why does SB 113 allow school board members to receive compensation for their school district when they're supposed to be volunteers? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I served without compensation, the board of trustees, my wife on the school board. Actually, a funny story, when I filed for county commission,
Sorry.
that's not my dog. When I filed for county, it was $5 to file for that office, and Whitney and others know who have filed. When I went to file for county commission, they said that'll be $181. I said, what happened to the $5? And they said, well, you get paid as a county commissioner, and you have to pay a portion of your salary to file. I didn't even realize there was a difference. Yeah, it was, again, Zach, driven by the large school districts. In Wichita, Kansas, it's a full-time job to be on the school board in what is it, 257 or something there. They wanted compensation because they felt they could get different people, business people, professional people, folks who are working hourly. How could they afford to be on the school board, which is nearly full-time? So by enabling large districts to pay more, they could attract folks from a broader range and attract maybe a more diverse group. I will tell you across the aisle, our minority members, African American, Hispanic, and others, wanted this because they would, again, enable folks, people of color, to join those school boards where they couldn't afford it otherwise. You're right. Out here,
Yeah.
we do it for free. You're exactly right.
Well, and I think that you get a certain type of person willing to do those positions when it's a volunteer and doesn't have ulterior motives outside of the betterment of through the position itself. And when there's a financial compensation, then it changes the motives.
Yeah, although I'll tell
It
you,
can. It doesn't always. I'm just saying it can.
Yeah.
$88.66 a day for a state legislature. It's not changing my motives to be.
Well, not for a doctor, but there are people who working at Walmart that would be a life-changing experience, but they could never afford to run for office.
They can't currently. You're exactly right. I wish people from all walks of life could do what I do.
And some of them are great. Like Isidro, I don't know if you've had a conversation with that young man, but he is extremely intelligent. Mm-hmm. But he's not in a position to be able to fund a big campaign.
That's right.
Like you did. There's no way I could ever run for like a Roger Marshall seat or something like that. I could never afford to.
You know,
I'd love to.
You,
I'd love to debate that man.
It is an advantage of running for state office. Funding a campaign. It cost me, my donors and friends, $16,000 to run for my state house seat. Running for Congress, $1.6 million. Sadly, our federal officials spend all their time fundraising, because that's what it costs. But
absolutely, and that's what become the primary motivation of politicians anymore is fundraising.
Right.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, I wish Congress had 3-year terms. They might take 1 year off from fundraising, but. Maybe not.
Hell, Dianne Feinstein's making so much money, she had her ass wheeled up there in that wheelchair today instead of retiring. Good God, how much money do you need? You can't collect it all. Dollars are not Pokemon.
Hard to give up power. It's very hard to give up power. In her
that
case.
shows the importance of term limits.
Term limit. And I signed a term limits pledge when I ran for Congress. I couldn't agree more with you. And I'll be term limited in the House since I'm running for Senate. Win or lose, I'll be out of the House.
You did sponsor a bill calling a convention of the states for term limits in Congress. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And I once was opposed to convention of states, and I don't know how you all feel about it, but the founders did put it in the Constitution. And I mean, this is a Federalist Republic. The states should rule. I am convinced, and running for Congress convinced me, the federal government in Washington, D.C. is not going to change itself. We taxpayers, we voters have a chance every other year voting for Congress and some senators to change it. And because of power, money, influence of bigger corporations, we don't change it. And incumbency has a big impact on that. I think 96% of federal incumbents get elected. So D.C. is not going to change itself. I changed my mind and said, you know what? I'm willing to take a chance on this country in my lifetime to try to change the things I need to change. Balanced budget.
When I asked you about conventions of state at the legislative coffee, the biggest part of your answer that concerned me is you could not answer my question, which was how do we choose the 2 people that represent Kansas? And I don't trust my legislation to choose those people. I would very much rather you guys draw 2 random social security numbers out of a hat than the legislation get to choose, because I don't feel like the legislation represents the people right now. They don't care about the people. Ty Masterson knows that 70% of Kansas supports marijuana legalization in Kansas in some form or another. 70%. But he will not allow that conversation to happen on the floor, and that's such a power play for solely for the sake of power. I don't trust my government to pick representation. I don't trust old or rich people to choose my representation because they're disconnected from the society.
Yeah, you sound just like Representative Vic Miller, the minority leader who voiced that exactly in the House, on the House floor.
For him.
Senator Thompson had a robust hearing back in March on the marijuana bill in the Senate, but 135, Senate Bill 135. But you're right, it did not get out of the Senate, so it didn't get to the House.
I do have a couple more questions about Senate Bill 113, and I'm sorry, the education bill. I had to go back to it. But you did mention that we've hit Gannon, which we have not with special education funding. How does this bill address the gap and teacher shortage in Kansas within that bill?
Well, we enhanced I'm going to blank on the name of it, the teacher scholarship program. We facilitated the credentialing of out-of-state teachers, which has been a real thorn in the side of folks coming in to our districts, trying to get them credentialed. And we basically forced the hand of KDHE to make it efficient. We also had military spouses in mind who maybe show up in Junction City or Leavenworth for 3 or 4 years with their spouse and who is serving in the military. They want a job right away. They're qualified teachers. We've been making them wait 6 to 9 months with credentialing. We straightened that out. I guess the Kansas Promise Scholarship is what I was talking about. The governor promoted and we endorsed the apprenticeship program in education. And I know we've rolled out a form of that already here in 457, which is really exciting. So that's a tough nut to crack, that teacher shortage. I understand where you're going with that, Ken. The legislature doesn't control it all. And I tell people, it was a lesson for me when Tyson had the fire. You guys probably remember when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
The day after the fire, 2 of the governor's cabinet members, David Tolan and the Ag Secretary, Mike Beam, flew in here, and the Tyson managers would not even let them inside the gate. We walked out there with them. It was a photo op. But how did that fire get resolved? Local response. It was local support. We did it. The cavalry comes later. And I tell people, get out there with your friends, with like-minded people, and try to solve some of these things locally. Those local solutions work best. But we're listening. I've always put out my cell phone number, 260-5799. Text me and send me an email. Please text me because I want to find it in those 500 emails I get from Johnson and Douglas County. I want to respond to my constituents, and the best way to do that is to let me know with a text that you're emailing. So again, we're amenable to what we can do at the state level. We cannot do everything.
Yeah. So the big question and humdrum around it is, will Kelly veto this bill and call a special session? Does she have to sign this bill at all?
No, she can pocket veto, let it become law. And I've told people today, I told several patients, I think that's what she will do. She has until the 18th, you probably know that, 18th of this month, to act. I don't think she wants us back in Topeka. We can create mischief as a legislature. It's tough to get all of it back. As soon as session's over, sine die is agreed to between the House and Senate. People have hip surgeries, they have weddings, they have cruises. Pick a day. You're not going to get everybody back to do things. But if we go back, game on. We can bring back the tax bill. We can bring up anything. It's not just to come back special session for the ed budget. So I think it was a compromise, yes, on many sides. But I do think she will at least let it become law for predictability for our district, if nothing else.
I've heard it described as a game of chicken.
There's a bit of that staring contest. There's no doubt about it. But that's the noise of democracy. You have to have a stomach for it to serve. I mean, I like it. When citizens come in to testify at committees, I mean, here are people coming to their government. and we are listening. So the process can work. Yes, there are majorities and there are minorities. I try to work with the minority party as hard as I can. I mean, we got fentanyl test strips decriminalized, and GABA, the date rape drug, GABA-aminobutyric acid, decriminalized those two things because of bipartisan work. Jason Probst, very liberal Democratic Representative Hutchinson, and I worked extremely close together. In fact, he we called me aside and said, "Hey, will you run this bill? Because I know if I do it, nobody on your side's going to listen." Those are the conversations we have. And I could have killed some of the senators who killed two of those bills on us with that decriminalization. We finally got it, thanks to Representative Stephen Owens, who was Russ Jennings' replacement on judiciary, or on juvenile justice. Got it in a conference committee, and we got that across the line. And hallelujah, but that was due to really bipartisan work. So you don't hear much about it. It goes on mainly in the hallways and in our closed offices, but to get good things done for fellow citizens, that's the way I like to work.
Well, shoot, I guess we should have had Whitney do the interview then. I'm an independent and Kent's a Republican, so we left Whitney out so he didn't get any Democrat questions.
I may hear those words the rest of my career.
We have you clipped out.
I had to get that in there.
That's precious. Thanks, Zach.
Dr. Clifford, we could talk all night long. We have 1,000 more questions for you, and we do hope you'll come back onto the show at some point in time and visit with us and our audience again down the road. Is there anything that you'd like to get out there that we may have not touched on or missed, or have a final thought?
Well, again, I think it was a very successful session. I was very disappointed that we didn't get the tax bill over the line. So I encourage your listeners to encourage their representatives to push for that when we go back in January. I think citizens ought to realize that we are just like them. We pay taxes. We have a job. Part-time legislators, we are approachable. So I do want to hear from people. You mentioned Isidro before. He emails me like 4 times a day sometimes.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. If the kid had the funding, he could go far.
So, I mean, again, it's free to email and reach out, and it costs a little more to come to Topeka. If you do, I'll give you the time because I know what it takes to get there. I do it every week.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Dr. Clifford.
No, my pleasure. Great discussion. Talk to you soon.
Have a good evening.
Absolutely.
Bye.
We'll be back right after this.
that
And
ad
we
just
are
makes me
back.
that ad just makes me want to like do manly things like drive a diesel thing or have something with a sledge and
Split a log of wood.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Those were
Or you could visit Smith Auto and Truck Parts at 402 East Burnside in Garden City for all of your vehicle part needs.
there you go. Fantastic question, guys. I loved.
So that was
Yeah.
a good conversation.
Very good.
It was a really good one.
I always wish those things could go longer because I could
Yeah.
hammer on things forever. But
Yeah.
it's always good that they're willing to come on. They know that we're going to ask some hard questions, and they come on anyway.
And they spend a lot of time with us. I would like to say, we had him here at 7:45 this evening. It's now 9 p.m. So he spends a lot of time to do this. So thank you, Dr. Clifford.
They always
I
have
thought-
to show up early to make sure that everybody's tech is playing nicely.
Yeah, there's things I don't agree with that he obviously does and is passionate about, but there are things that I do with him. He's an interesting politician. I hope he plays the John Dole role and only runs for office for so long and then moves on. Yeah, the people do need to know.
So let's just answer.
Okay, so here. We at one point decided we would do 10 to 12 episodes per season, and mostly focus them around election time.
The season ends when we burn out.
Yeah, so
we come back when we're not burned.
this session has been really crazy to follow, and there's been some wild things in it, and there's lots of points of arguments that could be had. Like the Born Alive bill. I could have gone on, had so much more I could have said.
May we all live in interesting times. I don't
We
want
do.
it anymore.
Yeah.
Can we get any of them precedented times?
Can we have any of them their boring times?
We do not plan on staying away for very long this break. We'd planned about a month, but with the election season coming up, we were going to plan some candidate interviews. Hopefully we can get all of our local representatives, city, county, Board of
Even
Education,
those that
and more.
plan on filing in the next 20 days.
I was going to say, I'm going to be, push that. I need more people running
Oh.
with me. Come on, let's do this. Get on the board.
Whitney, I have some really tough questions lined up for you as one of our interviews here at Sunflower State of Mind. So,
Surprise interview?
Surprise interview. Okay.
Surprise.
What a
No, we're not
twist.
doing-
Wait,
We're not doing that.
We got to edit it down now. Hi. I got a really excited puppy right now. Oh my gosh, what?
You got Anna.
So, we,
Anyway, yes, you
as
help
we
me-
had mentioned earlier today, as we were speaking, I'm not sure if that meeting is still going on.
The
Garden
well,
City Educators Association, DCEA, is in the middle of contract negotiations tonight, so we're going to review that video, and we'll probably put out a 2-minute reaction to it.
The
I see
10
Whitney
minutes
will.
that we watched together were wild.
Just wild.
So
the amount
there's
of-
a lot to discuss there.
Social, emotional learning that could be had there was on fire, I guess.
Okay.
I guess it would be an argument for it, in a sense. So we've also, I also want to circle back to the last couple of board meetings.
Okay.
Whitney's been talking about, bored, being bored, again, and they have seen
It's not going to be my
that
final
way.
thing, but my joke, make board meetings boring again. Like just chug along, make it functional without angering all the teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yes.
So-
go on.
One of the things that happened at this last board meeting was apparently an emergency vote on positions for the next school year for ESL, intervention, and other teachers. Typically, teachers have an opportunity to request new classes or new buildings that they want to go through, and this is filed out and approved by the board, and these transitions happen. So last week, a couple weeks ago, the district pulled all the interventionists, including ESL, and told the staff they would not be returning to those positions. And then you fast forward a week, and one principal in the district, which was Jenny Wilson School, was allowed to keep their ESL intervention because they were combining a half credit time position of art with the ESLs. However, other buildings in the district, as we know, brought together ideas to keep their ESL because the documentation of the minutes is vital to receiving funding. When they were told no, and then they were told no to everything when they came with legitimate. But here we are playing favorites, maybe one school to allow them to keep them. Now the district wants to offer a measly $1,000 per year stipend to a teacher willing to to be a paper pusher for ESL. And there are three very important reports. I may forget them here. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Migrant, McKinney, and Vento. It's ESL, Migrant, and McKinney Vento are the three reports, and they're very distinct from each other. They're trained on this,
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of hours of time with these students, and then outside with these students to do this. So honestly, why aren't we just leaving ESL and the interventionalists alone? Where's all this extra money coming from? Because now we are hiring former principals of schools to come in and work part-time as ESL teachers. And I know a few. Yeah, where's that money coming from? This is just, we're just adding insult to injury with all of this. I've talked to a few long-term subs that have tried out ESL because that's where they wanted to move. Long-term substitutes was into ESL, and they were petrified, mortified in these positions, not only because, and some of the ESL teachers don't speak Spanish, but they have things like Paris.
Right.
To help them. These long-term subs do not have that and will not have that. And this creates a major issue.
I don't think they were actually going to put long-term subs into ESL. They were going to try to put...
Yes.
The problem was they were taking the ESLs and making them general ed, and then basically filling in the gaps elsewhere with the long-term subs, which the problem with this whole theory is the long-term subs don't exist. They're already having a subbing shortage. I was listening to that Board of Education on the 1st, and I believe it was No, it wasn't Cage. It was Horace Good. Principal was talking about how that day alone they had 7 teachers missing with no subs, which when that happens, basically every teacher basically loses their break period or not break period, but their
planning period.
Planning period. Thank you. That's the word. They lose their planning period, and they were able to make it work. But then you have to compensate those teachers because that's supposed to be used. If they don't get that planning period, then that means that planning period has to be done. Guess what? At home. So there's some extra type of compensation. There's this whole moving around thing. My biggest thing with the whole process was not that it had to be done, because yes, there is a shortage. They have to figure something out. It was the lack of integration from those that are actually in the mud, the teachers.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely right. But what happened at this last board meeting was the school board was told this was an emergency vote to vote on the reallocations, and they voted on it. The problem with it was many of the positions listed were wrong.
Yes.
Teachers were told, yes, they could move here, and ended up having a completely different reassignment for it. And because these things are wrong, the only way for them to get out of this is it has to be put back on the agenda, and they have to go through all of this again, which just causes...
that just points to incompetence, basically. Like, somebody needs to be double-checking and triple-checking this. And one of the things that I need to look more into it, but one of the things that I'm worried about is something you just said, that kind of like they were talking about, I think Edith Sherman, you said, with their ESL was getting to keep theirs. I want to make sure.
Jenny Wilson.
Or Jenny Wilson, that's what it was. Jenny Wilson was, but
that's my alma mater.
One of the things is, like, I know for a fact, because I was on the site council, so I know how I remember them talking about how the distributions go, so I'd have to find out. It's been a few years. But Buffalo Jones was one, so I'd also want to make sure that they didn't lose any of their ESL, because that was one of those locations that was specialized for that. So basically they would congregate kids there so they could get the people, basically maximize the use of the people with the skills and the training for that. But the fact that all this is being done, and it just feels very odd when they're all wrong and people are so confused with what's going on. Basically, it still goes back to my initial issue with the whole problem was lack of communication from the administration down to the people on the ground, because they're just like, surprise! And I'm like, that's not the way to keep staff. at
because
all.
it's glowingly obvious that there are alternative motives here, but they're not going to discuss what the ultimate end goal is here to
Well,
cut
one of
all of
the
this.
I'm not going to I
a
myself
bigger issue though
digress.
here with this reallocation, the biggest another issue with this reallocation is principals are not being allowed to interview people that are coming into their building. This is being chose by admin at the top, which
Because there's
is
an ulterior motive.
crazy.
I'm going to not talk about ulterior motives because I cannot be in the mind of anybody else. You can, Zach. I'm fine with you talking about. I cannot because I cannot.
I just calling balls and strikes.
My behavioral theory mindset. I cannot read somebody's mind, so therefore I don't know why they're choosing that behavior. But I had a thought that I'm going with this. The problem is with a school, you need the right dynamic and culture, and everybody needs to kind of get along. So yes, I think the principals 100% need to be involved in that process, because that's why teachers move. They'll stay in the district and move to another one because, you know what? My personality type is clashing with my boss here, but I've got 6 other bosses to choose from. And then they find the one that they fit in, and then suddenly, boom, they sit there for, well, what we hope for. We have those teachers that last 20, 25 years, all the way up to retirement, maybe even longer. But right now, that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is just, because
There's also
everybody's being cut out.
They're also talking that principals are going to be possibly shuffled around this next year because Dominguez is putting out this, instead of it being my school, he wants it to be my district. He wants more unity inside of the district instead of around the building that they are in. So, it's more of a my way kind of feel than, a collaborative effort.
So this might be, honestly, in my opinion, well, there's a couple opinions. This is I'm worried about what we're seeing is a glass elevator kind of effect where it's just like, this is how I want it. Everyone else is there. And I'm not actually interacting with the people below me. So therefore I'm not actually seeing anything because I'm using my own elevator. I don't actually see anybody as I go to my office, except for social media pictures or things like that. No, my biggest thing there with that big shuffle and move around, like, I understand a need for it, but why would somebody who just entered in, and one of the things that I'm worried about, and this is the main thing that I've been worried about with Dominguez from the beginning, is he came from, I believe you have the information. Do you know how large his previous district was?
We do. I don't have it at
it was only like
hand,
2, maybe 3 or 4 schools tops. Like,
it wasn't very large. I think it was, somewhere like Scott City.
Yeah, it's
a
fraction of what this district is. And I felt like he came in with way less experience, so he's trying to run it like a very small district when it's way bigger with like different specializations and things like that. We're not like, I don't know, Wichita size or New York City size where they have multiple subgroups within it. But the thing is, like, I don't know if he understands.
I have a really hard time with some of the principals that have been at buildings for 20 years that are at the retirement age and are only at that building because they love that building. They love the team they've built. They know the parents in that school district. They love the parents in that school district. They know the kids that are there. They know the kids that are coming in there, and they're not retiring because they are passionate about that. And we're going to take that principal and we're going to move them to a whole new school and make them start all over. It just doesn't make sense. It's going to contribute to the Exodus, June 2nd, I believe it is.
That we're all expecting, which honestly, it's already started now. I don't have the numbers, and we'd have to actually add all the numbers together from each thing, and half those numbers aren't even public, so we don't know how many are leaving.
Well, we expect big. We expect big this year, and probably maybe even bigger next year. For the ones that don't do it this year,
Yeah.
But you know what has bothered me too is I've had two schools, different schools, three, reach out to me about Dominguez and a school board member showing up there, and they have questions about all of this, and the school board member is caught babbling and trying to answer questions the best they can, and they are getting no support from Dominguez, and Dominguez is staying quiet.
It's even worse than that. Like, Dominguez is just completely silent, not answering. This is the reports that I'm getting as well. And I mean, we had one of the board members supposedly break down during it and just start crying.
I can say that was not confirmed.
That was not confirmed. That's why I'm not saying the names, so I'm not.
So.
But I've heard it from a couple people now. So somebody broke down.
The conversations have been the conversations have been heated. I know for a fact that nobody cried. I didn't get that, but they were heated conversations. But what upsets me is these board's members are on their way out, and the guy that's there implementing this thing cannot support his ideas, thoughts, and embrace the teachers to the change that's coming to them. That's not what leaders do, and it's scary. And
Oh, go ahead. Finish up.
We're so another aspect. Like we're talking about the ESL and interventionists. Teachers are going to be required. They're talking about these groups of two, where they will teach two subjects. Be required for that. So as we know, we've talked about science teachers are being pulled to teach general education. But we're going to be piling these on top.
And through all of this, raises have not been discussed at all.
Raises have not been discussed. In fact,
comments have been made that raises do not bring teachers to the district. And I don't give a shit who you are or what your job is. If you pay more, you'll get more people applying. That's just a fact.
100%.
They're talking about after-school programs and holding
them there for another 20 to
for after school. Yeah. So. Well, no, I think the 20 minutes was Russ.
That was the regular academic day. Yeah.
He was asking
we need to
reduce the day
by
20 minutes.
Get those facts better, because we were just watching it live and not even able to make notes because we were preparing for the show. But
the thing that I watched today that really hit me was just basically Jiggett asking the teachers to just eat it. They're just better with you, so you just need to eat it. And the thing is, I came from a job of passion with the zoo field, and I know just because you're passionate doesn't mean you won't be burnt out. And if you just try to eat on that person's passion to do the job, you're going to lose them a lot. And the thing is, on their way out, they're going to be crashing and diving because they are done. They're just done. They're not even there. So to be that unempathetic to the people that we want to care for our children in our community is very, very dangerous.
Well, not only that, we're talking about ruining ESL, which is what is going to make sure there's not a language barrier for those kids when they grow up. We're talking about cutting the sciences and the music and the arts and the things that enrich a community and bring in scholars to a community. We are creating a mass exodus of Garden City schools that's not going to affect us for another 15 years, but it's going to be bad.
I've been saying what we've witnessed now is probably going to take 5 to 10 years to recover. And we need to stop the bleeding now and start the healing process immediately. That's why some dude here is running for office. Yeah. So, we need to get that bleeding stopped. We need to be moving forward and growing our teachers. The problem is, yes, money is not the only answer, but adding lack of pay and just disrespecting them over and over again. And I mean, how many times have they basically said that in the board meetings that they aren't qualified? Board members have said that during meetings. They're not qualified to basically do teaching or to bring up tough subjects at an age-appropriate level. I'm like, they're the only ones in our community that are trained to give talks about on an age-appropriate level to our children. We need to respect that. They are constantly trained. We need to stop this bleeding. We need to make the teachers trust in our community and our board again. And the problem is this is going to impact our larger community as a whole. Whether you have kids in the district or not, what's the first thing that a family is going to be looking at when they move into an area?
The school district.
The school.
It's always the
How's the school doing?
How long your people are going to stay depends on the schools.
Exactly, and this is just it. So
how many people come back after getting an education depends on the schools.
Yeah, it bleeds out into everything, and even I'll even go into the whole COVID thing because that was something that was that brought up because of that. Because I'm like, oh, of course this is the one main source because that's the only thing that every community in every sub community, let's call it a sub community in our area in Finney County, the one thing that we all share, our kids are going to the schools. Whether you go to different churches, whether you go to different works, doesn't matter. All of our kids share this one unit. So we need to make that unit as strong as possible to grow. And the thing is, it's so diverse. We are the most diverse community in we've been in the papers multiple times. We're like the future of rural communities, like national news stories come on Garden City because we are the most diverse location in this rural type environment. And we are the future of America. We are showing where we're going to go. We need to support the ESL programs. We need to support all the special needs programs as well. And we need to stop
and classified staff and non-classified staff, your janitors, your man. There's there's so many things, and we do need to address them, but we don't have to do it all here tonight. Unfortunately, as much as we want to, and we've been here for an hour and a half. We thank you guys for hanging out with us for an hour and a half tonight, longer than we usually go. Whitney, you've got a campaign rolling. We're going to be on. We're going to be
rolling. But before, I really, really, really would love some running mates, some people of moderate, like mine. Just diversity actually would be great. We have Isidro and me, and we need a few more. I would love a smattering of our community.
Williams, excuse me.
What?
Sorry. Getting cold.
I would love all the diversity, young, old, parents of various. Actually, I would love a special needs parent to be on the Board of Education. That would be fantastic. I understand.
You know what I'd like to see on the school board? A student and a teacher. I think that would be appropriate on the school board.
I believe there actually is a rule because then they'd be their own boss. So I think teachers actually can't run.
I think there's
However,
a seat at the table on, you know what I mean, a little bigger
I will
one.
say that the thing is, I have been partnered with teachers for so long, and I even studied the curriculum with them and go to meetings for actually over a decade here in Garden City. I don't know. I feel like I'm at best the teacher if that makes sense. Yeah. But we need Isidro, we need a Hispanic parent. I would love that. So anybody out there, recruit them. And then a special needs parent, that'd be great.
There's several communities that need representative. A Somali, Burmese. There's several nationalities all over. That would be great. So again, thank you guys for joining us this season. We're going to be back a little bit after June 1st sometime.
We'll do little bits here and there while we're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. So we won't be too far away, and if breaking news happens, we'll definitely be back. So we love you. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you when we see you.
Thank you, true believers. Bye.